In the early 19th century, the American whaling industry was a cornerstone of the nation's economy, with ships embarking on perilous voyages to harvest whale oil, a valuable commodity used for lighting lamps and making soap. Among these vessels was the Essex, a whaling ship from Nantucket, Massachusetts. Commanded by Captain George Pollard, Jr., the Essex fateful journey in 1820 would become one of the most harrowing maritime disasters in history, inspiring Herman Melville's classic novel, Moby Dick. Launched in 1799, the Essex was an aging but sturdy ship, measuring approximately 87 feet in length and weighing about 238 tons. Despite its age, the vessel had a reputation for being lucky, having completed several successful voyages. On August 12, 1819, the Essex set sail from Nantucket on what was intended to be a 2.5-year voyage across the Pacific Ocean. The crew, consisting of 20 men, was seasoned and prepared for the arduous journey ahead. Their mission, to hunt sperm whales and return with a lucrative cargo of whale oil. The crew included First Mate Owen Chase, a 21-year-old with promising future, Second Mate Matthew Joy, who was known for his cautious nature, and cabin boy Thomas Nickerson, who was just 14 years old at the time. Also among the crew was Owen Coffin, Captain Pollard's 17-year-old cousin, whom Pollard had promised to look after during the voyage. The men of the Essex, many of them young and full of dreams, had no idea that their journey would soon descend into an unimaginable nightmare. For over a year, the voyage proceeded as planned, with the crew successfully hunting whales and filling their barrels with oil. However, as they ventured deeper into the Pacific, whale sightings became scarce. In search of better hunting grounds, Captain Pollard steered the Essex further west, into less charted waters, where the crew hoped to find an abundance of sperm whales. They reached the offshore whaling grounds, over 1,000 miles from land, a place teeming with marine life and lurking dangers. On November 20th, 1820, the crew encountered a pod of sperm whales. As they launched their smaller whaleboats to pursue the creatures, an enormous bull sperm whale, estimated to be 85 feet long, emerged and behaved in a manner never before seen by whalers. It observed the ship for several moments before charging with tremendous force. The impact was like a thunderclap, shaking the vessel violently. The whale, as if possessed by an unnatural rage, turned and rammed the Essex a second time, striking the bow with catastrophic force. The ship began to sink rapidly, leaving the stunned crew scrambling for survival. With their ship lost, the 20 crew members faced a dire predicament. They salvaged the supplies that they could and took refuge in 3 small whaleboats, each ill-equipped for long voyages. They had limited water, a small amount of hardtack biscuits, and almost no navigational tools. Captain Pollard proposed sailing west towards the Marquesas Islands, but fears of encountering cannibalistic tribes led the crew to decide on a more arduous journey eastward, aiming for the South American coast, over 2,000 miles away. It was a fateful decision that would seal their grim fate. The decision proved disastrous. The crew endured scorching sun, violent storms, and dwindling provisions. Their meager rations soon ran out, and they were forced to resort to desperate measures. Hunger gnawed at their bodies, and thirst burned their throats. As weeks turned into months, starvation and dehydration took their toll, leading to hallucinations and delirium. When crew members succumbed to the elements, their bodies were reluctantly consumed by the survivors in a grim bid to stay alive. They had become the very thing they had feared upon rejecting the Marquesas: cannibals. One by one, the men perished. The first deaths were natural, but as their suffering continued, they faced an unthinkable moral dilemma. In a particularly harrowing episode, the crew drew lots to determine who among them would be sacrificed to sustain the others. The youngest member, Owen Coffin, drew the fatal lot. Despite Captain Pollard's objections and offers to take his place, Coffin accepted his fate with a solemn sense of duty. He was executed by gunshot, and his remains were consumed by his shipmates in desperate struggle to survive. The 3 whaleboats became separated during a storm, further dwindling their chances of rescue. One boat was lost to the sea entirely, its crew never to be seen again. Pollard's boat, carrying himself and 3 others, was reduced to just 2 survivors, Pollard and Charles Ramsdell. They were found gnawing on human bones when they were finally rescued by the whaling ship Dauphin on February 23, 1821, after 95 days adrift. Owen Chase and 2 others had been rescued days earlier by another passing vessel. Of the original 20 crew members, only 8 survived the ordeal. Captain Pollard was among them, but he was forever haunted by the experience. He attempted another whaling voyage, but after yet another shipwreck, he retired from the sea, living out his days in Nantucket as a night watchman. He rarely spoke of the Essex except in hushed tones to those who asked. Owen Chase, too, was deeply scarred, suffering from reoccurring nightmares for the rest of his life. Thomas Nickerson, the young cabin boy, eventually wrote a memoir of the event decades later, ensuring that the tragedy of the Essex would not be forgotten. The tragedy of the Essex stands as a stark reminder of the perils faced by those who venture into the unknown and the extreme measures humans can resort to in a fight for survival. The incident not only inspired literary works, but also serves as a testament to the resilience and fragility of the human spirit when confronted with nature's unforgiving forces. Even today, the sinking of the Essex remains one of the most chilling tales of maritime history, a grim story of man versus nature, where the price of survival was almost too steep to bear. The memory of the Essex endures, immortalized in history books, museums, and literature. The bones of its lost crew rest in the depths of the Pacific, silent witnesses to the ultimate test of human endurance and the dark corners of desperation. The story of the Essex is not merely one of tragedy, it is also one of the indomitable human will. With the will to survive against impossible odds, the will to confront mortality in its rawest form, and the will to continue onward even when the world seems to have abandoned you to the vast, unrelenting sea.